będzie w języku angielskim, więc przełączę się teraz już na język angielski. So once again, thank you for coming to our special event called Polish Photography in the North Building of Photography Collection, co-organized by Tate Gallery Instytut. Yes, somewhere is here. Yeah. And also a restaurant agency represented by Wiktoria Michałkiewicz, and who will lead us today in this conversation. I would also like to welcome our guests and thank you for coming here. And Brandei Estes, she is a director from Chausse 36 Photography. Nicholasa Barkera, art collector, founder, member of Tate Gallery, and Emese Mucsi. It's very hard to pronounce it, but yeah, curator of Kappa Center. Thank you once again for accepting our invitation and that you are here with us tonight. At the end of this short introduction, I would also like to add that the event is co-organized by Tate Gallery Instytut as a part of Foreign Cultural Program of the Polish Presidency of the Council of the European Union 2025. It's very long, so I read it. And co-financed by Ministry of Culture and National Heritage Republic of Poland. Thank you once again for coming and have a good time. And I give the floor to Wiktoria.
Thank you so much. Oh, now we can really perfect. Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much, Julia, for the introduction and for hosting this fantastic debate, which is going to be fantastic, believe me, because we have the best guests in the world. And I'm very excited that they agreed to participate in our meeting tonight. It's an incredibly unique opportunity, I think, for everybody here to ask questions, to engage with us here, and I think also that if you have any questions, you can write them down, or even if you just want to interrupt during the conversation, also you're welcome to do so, obviously, because we are here also, and our guests to answer your questions and to engage with you. So yes, who are our guests? So as we know, this is the event that is held in English. So I will be leading a little bit also via this presentation through all these subjects that we're going to touch upon. And then also I would like to thank obviously the Instytucie Fotografii Fort for partnering with in this debate here with us. It's an incredible and fantastic place to have this event. And then of course the Tate Institute for arranging this fantastic opportunities for all of us here tonight. So yes, our incredible experts, they have very long bios and a lot of things to say about the subjects that we are interested in here. So as Julia already mentioned, we have here in Warsaw for the first time Brandei Estes here, who was recently appointed as director of Chausse 36 in Berlin, so the Center for Photography in Berlin, but also Brandei has incredible experience from Sotheby as well, so she's been also leading the photography department at Sotheby, and also she's an expert also in auction market, just for you to also understand what to ask and which questions to ask Brandei, and also on the top of it, she's also an incredible expert in gallery world, so that is also another part of her expertise, and then the rest you can read if you're curious about it. So thank you, Brandei, for coming here tonight. Then we have also Nicholasa Barkera, fantastic expert, also with very long career as a film, TV, and commercials director, but also a collector, long-term collector of art, and not only photography, and he's going to talk about his long-lasting relationship with collecting photography and other forms of art, so you can also ask these questions about collecting. And then he is also one of the founding members at the Tate Gallery's Photography Acquisitions Committee. So this is also a fantastic opportunity for us to understand the institutional collections and the approach to collecting from that part of the market, so to say. Also for the audience to get a little bit more insight into the expertise that we're having here tonight. Exciting. And then also we have another fantastic guest from Hungary, from Budapest, so Emese Mucsi. And she's a curator of photography at the Robert Capa Contemporary Photography Center in Budapest. And also, well, she's very experienced in the field, also in our region, so Central Eastern Europe. So if you have any questions about photography market in the specific region as well, then Emese is the person to ask. She's also a lecturer of photography and yeah, curating many different shows, and editor of Photography magazine as well. And then, yeah, myself, I'm just your host. So, well, first of all, so this debate is going to lead you through different aspects of collecting photography, and again, maybe some of you will find these questions a little basic. Some of you maybe are the first-time collectors. So actually my first question would be, who has already started collecting photography? Who has a photograph in their collection? Courageous hands. Yes, okay. And who would like to start collecting but doesn't know where to start? Okay, perfect. Great, thank you so much. So yes, exactly. I mean, getting started is, I think, one of the questions that we all would have here in the audience as well. And maybe as a start, as a warm-up a little bit, what was actually your first pieces that you collected, and why were there your first choices for your collection? Andy?
Hello? Okay, it's on. Hi, thank you so much for having us here. This is really just a wonderful opportunity to meet you all and speak, and really good for us to get to know the Polish market and interest. What was my first piece? Gosh, I wasn't expecting this. I actually bought, which is interesting with regards to what we're talking about, and we'll go into in depth, about be careful what you buy. One of the first things I bought that was a photograph in my early 20s was a pair of Helmut Newton photographs, but they were not signed and they were not editioned by the estate. They were authorized and stamped by a lawyer. I don't know, I can see some people nodding that knows this story, that know this story. I didn't know this when I was in my early 20s. And I wish I'd done better research. I didn't spend a lot of money, but I should have done more research. And again, we can go into that later. It's about relationships and trust when you're buying works of art. I still have them because I like the image, but I know now what I bought.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic, and this is a great story, exactly to come back to. Thank you so much, Brandei, for sharing. What about you, Nicholas? What was your first photography piece in your collection?
So I've been collecting since I was, by the way, hello. Privilege to be here, and a good opportunity to get to know you. So I started collecting when I was 7. I collected stamps, and I became obsessed with little pieces of paper and watermarks, and postage, franking, and I started trading, swapping. And then, so this was in my gene, and I learned very early on, you need knowledge. It's one thing to love these little things, but unless you have knowledge, the other schoolboys will cheat you, and you will do a bad swap. So then when I become a young adult, I have a great aunt who leaves me £2,000, and quite a lot of money then, and I've always had, because I'm a man with no faith, I've always looked for meaning in artworks, art and music. It's always been very important to me. And at university, I had this £2,000, and I thought, what am I going to do with it? And I started going to Sotheby's and Christie's, and I was buying damaged works on paper. In particular, Germany, I have a weakness for German art, German expressionism, German Debata, and as I started to do that, often in the auction rooms was my hero, my all-time hero, David Bowie. So I had a real incentive to keep collecting.
Fantastic, thank you so much. Very well. We're going to talk more about that soon. Emese?
Hi, hello. Thank you for inviting me. And yeah, I also have a little collection. And actually, its nature also started by the first piece I got from an artist in collaboration. And so it was kind of an exchange. I worked with him for 2 years. And I don't know if you're familiar with the curatorial fees in the region, but for two years, it's not. I didn't get like a big amount of fee, but we had a really good relation. And then yeah, he just gave me one art piece, Marcel Esterházy, who I worked often in my practice afterwards as well. And I know it can be a bit controversial as well, because then it can mean that I'm engaged with those artists who gave me an artwork. But yeah, I can be very direct and clear with my attitude. So yeah, we can also speak about this, because I think for us in the region, mostly it can be barter or this exchange version of collecting art can be one possibility to develop a small collection or bigger collection.
Thank you so much. And then a follow-up question: if you had an unlimited budget, what would be the piece you'd acquire to your personal collection right now from photography? And why? Also, why? Even the ones that are already maybe in other people's collections.
Gosh, that's a hard one. Maybe people of the 20th century, the August Sander, to have those 600 odd photographs of the entire collection. And if anyone was at Paris Photo, it was there exhibited, and it was really, really beautiful. And I think such an important body of work in the history, the canon of photography. Yeah, just a really meaningful, that stands the test of time.
Fantastic, thank you so much. Yes, I recommend everybody who hasn't been to Paris Photo to look at even at the documentation from the fair, because it was an incredible installation. Yes.
And I would also say, just like Brandei, I wanted an August Sander, but I wanted it for a very particular reason. Is that I have collected not just drawings, prints, paintings, and photographs, but I've always been very interested in portraits. And what fascinates me about portraits is very, very few people can make great portraits, both in painting and in photography. And what is so interesting is when you see a truly great photograph, a portrait of somebody, as with many of Zander's portraits, they have a power, they have a clarity, they impart meaning and truth, but it's so difficult to describe why a portrait is successful and why a portrait isn't. So this is an ongoing obsession of mine. Who are the great portraitists? Because there are very few of them. And why is it that they have this quality which is so difficult for other photographers to find?
Thank you so much. Incredible. So same artists, two different motivations for collecting. That's something also that we're going to explore further. And you, Emese?
Yeah, I think I would buy something from André Kertész. And because we had also, not because just he was Hungarian, but of course in the market it's a great value what his works and always represented. But also we had an exhibition for 4 years in the Robert Capa Center, and I guided so many people in the exhibition. And it was kind of a core collection from Szigetbecse, where he spent his early years in Hungary. And I was not able to be bored by this small selection, so it has like a lot of layers and also very authentic, and I already, of course, liked his work before and knew his work before, but after these 4 years of constant guided tours and interpretation, I was strengthened, and my admiration is deeper.
Fantastic, thank you so much.
Isn't it interesting that we all said classic photography, vintage classic, and not contemporary? There's nothing wrong with contemporary, but just how interesting that we all went for classic.
I mean, definitely, I think that's one of the interesting points, but then also that, well, this motivation also on how you connect with the work and the ways that actually become so interesting and so personal.
And then also, of course, Cortège and Sonder influenced hugely so many future generations of photographers and continue to have an influence on contemporary artists today.
Absolutely. But getting back to basics here as well. So we mentioned Paris Photo, and this is actually Grand Palais where this fair takes place. And unfortunately, this is not from the right angle to see the installation. But my question to you is, because many of the people here in the audience, they haven't raised their hand when asked if they already have a piece acquired to their collection. So if you haven't bought a photograph before, where would you start looking, and why? What would be the motivation, actually, the initial motivation for the choice when you don't have yet this knowledge that you do have?
I would say somewhere like Paris Photo is a great place to start. You can start obviously in the city where you live, know what you like, engage with galleries, but if you want to see the best photography galleries, who are considered the best in the world, and what does the best mean? It means they have the highest standard of artistic photography that they are showing, and by that standard, not just an intrinsic connoisseurship of skill and beauty, but they're also held accountable by the fair's vetting committee, right? So already there's an embedded sense of trust that someone else has done the hard work for you, making sure that these works really are authentic to the author. And if there are additions, that the additions are kept as they say they are, that the works are signed, if the artist signed them. So someone has already done the process for you, and that's the committee at Paris Photo who will do that. And Paris Photo first started, I think in 1997, was the first year of the fair, and it has grown to be the biggest international photography fair, commercial fair in the world. And this year they had over 240 exhibitors. And do you know how many people visited the fair?
No, but it was a lot.
60,000 people, over 60,000 people. It's immense. And really galleries from all over the world, from Argentina to Taiwan to Hungary, of course, North America,
Poland as well.
Poland.
There were restaurants.
I think it's 3 Polish galleries. Yeah, I think 2 or 3. I think, yeah.
3.
3.
Jedna stara i Monaco.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Sorry.
So it's really a great place to start. Of course, there are other places to start, but And you also have the opportunity at these fairs to meet the artists. A lot of the artists will come and they will stand on their booths with their gallery and talk to you, talk about the work. There are also many book signings because there's a whole section devoted to books. So it can be overwhelming because there are many booths and there are a lot of works to see. But I can't recommend it highly enough as somewhere to start.
Fantastic, thank you so much. Do you have any other ideas where to start, how to start?
Maybe if you don't have like a starter budget, you can also go to universities, like art universities, and like find what students are doing, and start to support like a young artist who is not even graduated, because of course they will also give you like a fair price for their work, but since they are not already in the market, I think it's also can be like somewhere a point where you can start. Also, if you are working in the same field, then you can maybe offer like a piece of work. I mean, like doing something together and then exchange like project work and into like a photograph or art piece. It depends on the informal contract between the artist and the other person, the collector, or the for example, like a curator, student. They can grow together, which I think is also kind of a good and encouraging way to keep doing it, like start collecting and support artists in different ways from the very beginning.
Thank you so much.
So as I said, I started, had this little bit of money. I was buying works on paper that were damaged and I was then getting them restored. And I couldn't believe I was buying works by people like George Gross, Otto Dix, Tate Gallery. They're just a few £100. And all of my friends saw on my walls these artworks by famous artists. I obviously felt very proud that I was this clever person who had this artwork. And they said, well, how do you do this? And I said, well, I'm buying at auction. And I then had an idea. I was finishing my degree, and I realized that amongst my friends, everybody in their first 5 years of their professional life would maybe spend £400 or £500 on art, and most of that would go on framing. So I contacted 10 friends and I said, why don't we set up a little collecting group? And each of you give me £500, I will go to auction and I'll come back with some really well-established names, all works on paper, and we will have a lending library. We'll meet once a year and we'll distribute the pictures, and then at the end of the year we'll come back and we'll pick numbers out of the hat, and then we'll pick up the picture for the next year. So we started doing it like this, and I was then getting interested in photography, and I was working for the BBC, I didn't have enough money, so I thought we'll use this group to start collecting photographs. So I proposed to my 10 friends, each year I'm going to buy one new piece of art, sometimes photography, and you've got to give me 1/10 each of whatever I've spent. So I started making my first photography acquisitions. The first was the great American colorist William Eggleston, who some of you may know. He was the man who made color photography acceptable. Before Eggleston, color was considered to be the medium of advertising and lies and exaggerations. And Eggleston was the man who, in a sense, helped put colour photography on the map, and then many other photographs followed. So, sorry, that's a rather long introduction, but that's how I started.
This is brilliant, brilliant idea also.
I just wanted to add one more thing, that we quickly spoke about photo books, and I think it's also a good way to start because they are very high quality and and exceptional pieces now, and like a lot of photo books was also in Paris Photo, as Brandei mentioned also. And yeah, can be a very affordable piece to start and to attach to. And yeah, you can also grow a library of photo books, and it's at one point you can sell them if it's necessary, because there are some editions which has like limited numbers and limited copies, and yeah, it's like also a good way to start if you don't have a big starting budget.
Just another point to add, a really good place to start is, and I don't know if this exists here in Poland, but in London there are a number of institutions where you can become a patron. For a small fee, you become a member. So I'm thinking about the Photographers Gallery in London, and you join up and you get invited to private studio visits with artists in London, but also abroad. So the director and curators of the Photographers Gallery will take the patrons to Paris Photo and give them a tour, to Arles, to the photo festival, and so on. And this is a great way to not only support an institution, of course, but to develop your own eye, what do you like, and to meet other people who are like-minded like you, and talk about photography. And again, it's for, I think the entry level at the Photographers Gallery is about £500 for the whole year, and you get to visit every exhibition for free there, as many times as you like. So you're giving back, but you're also gaining a lot from it, I feel. And again, I can't emphasize enough that collaborative nature, not just with experts, but with your own community, like-minded people who share the same interests.
Fantastic! So many great advice how to start. That's really wonderful. But my next question is actually, why photography even? Like, why would you collect photography in the first place? Because also, especially I think in our region, photography is still on the way to make its way to the market in one way or the other. So yeah, more classical forms of art are still prevailing. And do you have any arguments why to collect photography?
I can start. Well, I think what's so interesting about photography, and what I think is really lucky for all of us here who are interested in the market, it's so young collecting photography, right? The market for photography, as in putting it on the wall, buying and selling it, whether it's through a gallery or an auction, started in the late 70s, early 80s. So prior to that, photography was only confined to magazines and newspapers. It was not considered an art form. This means that there's still a lot of potential and growth, both in terms of collecting the work and also from the industry side, those who are showing it, displaying it, selling it, but it's in the overall canon of art markets and different types of medium, it's still quite young. So, and because it's still growing and there are so many young, great photographers, you can be a part of someone's, an artist's career and their journey and help support them, as well as, depending on your interests, have something historic to the market.
And I would, because I've been collecting for really quite a while, I'm very interested in this process of you start as a collector and you change as a human being. Your taste changes. And so this is going to be a history of you. And it's a really good idea to ask yourself quite challenging questions, which is, well, why do I want this stuff? Am I doing that? I was showing off. You know, when I was a student, I was saying, I've got these incredible pictures, and yeah, I was very bad in motivation. But it's a very good starting point, because my premise as a collector has always been know the difference between what you like and what is good. And I said, know the difference between what you like and what is good. And that it's all of us, everybody in this room who starts collecting, each of you will be a bundle of needs and wishes, and some of you like particular colours, some of you will like particular types of decoration, some of you will go for minimalism, some of you will go for something more decorous, some of you will like street photography, each of you, as a collector, has a responsibility to work, why is it that I'm drawn to certain types of art and photography? And the reason you need to know yourself and your motivation is you can make big mistakes. I know that in front of certain types of art, I have been hardwired to go for certain things, and my judgment is clouded. And maybe that doesn't matter. Sometimes you buy things because they remind you of something. There's something deeply personal, sentimental. It doesn't matter whether it's not very good. But as you grow as a collector, and as the years tick past, the importance of these works of art starts to change. Do the works still sing to you from your walls? Do they still have meaning? So this is a long journey, so when you're starting off, ask these questions. What do I like? Why do I like it? And then try and say, well, shall I start off by specialising in something that I really like? Do I like street photography? Do I like contemporary conceptual photography? Am I interested in portraiture? Is there an area of photography which is still very cheap because nobody's very interested in it? Do I want to support young emerging artists because they're my friends and I'm interested in their work? That's obviously the most dangerous thing to do when you're starting out, because many artists will fall away. But these are some of the questions that you can start with when you begin your collection.
Thank you so much.
From a personal perspective, I'm very passionate about photography, so that's why I keep collecting, but not like I'm a big collector. Mostly the pieces in my personal collection are based on this collaboration with artists, or this growing together concept from the university years actually. And but in the same time, I think still, if I would like to buy a piece of art like a painting or more like from classical media, it's also very expensive, much more expensive than start with photography. And of course, you can turn to painting and sculptures at one point if it's possible. But photography is very vivid, I think, and also you can have a lot at home as well if you are that type of collector who put the artworks around yourself in your home. And practically I think it's good to start with photography and keep doing it since it's possible. And I think I'm working with photographers in my curatorial job, and I'm also engaged with them, so that's my personal confession.
Just to add, I think a lot of people think they have to be just a photo collector, or just buying paintings, or just buying sculpture, and I would argue that that's wrong. I think you should collect, firstly, of course, whatever you like, but I think it's beautiful to live with different types of work in your home. And photography, I promise you can find a place next to a painting or a sculpture, and that's a great place to start if you've already collected paintings or you've inherited works. Do some research and find out who were the photographers, what school was going on at that time, what were the connections. And that's a really great way to build a lovely dialogue and have some coherence to the works that are on your walls as well, if you're looking for that and need that.
Fantastic. fantastic. Thank you so much. And yeah, actually, we'll stay with you, Brandon. So, well, I think one of the things that some people also wonder about, or also these questions I'm getting sometimes, is the question about primary and secondary market, also, and well, where to look for the works. And again, this issue of trust that we mentioned in the very beginning. And you yourself, you worked both in the gallery world and in the auction market, I like. So could you explain to us as beginners in this field what is the difference also, and yeah, how to start searching in the galleries or in the auction environment, and what is, yeah, how to navigate that?
Of course. So when we talk about the primary market, what we mean in this industry parlance is the primary market are the galleries. It's the first place that a work is shown and offered to the public for sale. So an artist typically will be picked up by a gallery, and that gallery may have gone to their graduate show at university, seen the work, started a working relationship with the artist, has a show on. You as the collector come and you buy the work, and maybe 5, 10, 15 years later your tastes change, or you see that the value of that work has gone up and you want to perhaps buy something else. You would then take that to the auction house, which is the secondary market. So everything that's sold at auction in a public sale, most of the works, not all, but I would say 90% are works that have been bought at a gallery first on the primary market. Sometimes those works are gifts from artists or they're inherited, but often they are works that, as I say, have come from a gallery, first of all, the primary market. And galleries should, and people are good at doing this now, they weren't at the beginning in the 80s, but you keep your invoice, you have a certificate that's signed, if the artist signs certificates, you have some sort of footprint, and you need that to show the provenance, right? Because just as in painting and sculpture, provenance is incredibly important if you want to resell the work. So if you're buying in a gallery and then the secondary market. Now, what you need to remember, of course, is that those two markets have different price points. And this is where it gets a little bit complicated, sticky with photographs, because some artists have editions, many photographers have editions, or photographers like Cartier-Bresson, who was working in the 40s, 50s, 60s, there will be vintage prints that might be one-off, unique works. But Cartier-Bresson, his gallerist in the 80s, asked him to print different sizes, but with no edition. They are open editions. And because galleries then were not very good at their bookkeeping, it's very hard to know how many prints of one image were taken. So this is where it can get complicated, and that's why you have to go to a gallery that you trust, but know that that work has a different price on the primary and the secondary market. So back to the editions. If the edition is still available, if you see a work at auction and you do your research and you find out that you can still buy it from a gallery, that work in auction will be less than the gallery price because it's still available, it hasn't sold out. So this leads into talking about supply, demand, scarcity, the rarity of a work. But it's not rocket science, but it's good to understand, and that's really the difference between the primary and secondary.
Thank you so much, Brandei. Yeah,
I'd like to come in with a general point, which is when you start collecting photography or any art, one of the things that we forget is that it's actually, the art market is like a fashion market. that's rather embarrassing to admit, because we like to think, oh no, this is art, this is not fashion. But actually, the art market is extraordinarily driven by changing tastes. Most artists have a lifespan of about 4 to 7 years in which their work is appreciated in the primary and the secondary market, and then they'll disappear, maybe for a couple of decades, maybe forever, maybe they'll come back. So it's very interesting as a collector. When you start buying things, this is why I said to you earlier, always think about the difference between what you like and what is good. Because what is so exciting is when you can buy work that is actually going to transcend the cycle of fashion. I'm going to say immodestly, a couple of things that I have bought that just, I think, I'll give you, I don't know whether how many of you here know the work of Sugimoto, the Japanese artist who does, well, I was very lucky to be in New York when he showed his seas for the first time. When I first saw the Sugimoto sea, I thought, this is a piece of art for a lifetime. It doesn't even matter if it goes out of fashion, I think I will need it forever. I bought earlier an Eggleston, which I was telling you about. Again, that's something that I think has, despite the fact that colour photography is maybe less in fashion now than it was 10 years ago, I feel that this is a piece of work that will continue to speak and will continue to hold up. So all I want to say is just remember that the art market is very, very fickle. And in making these decisions, sometimes it doesn't matter. If you love something, buy it. And if you fall out of love with it, then you can get divorced. But it's just interesting to remember this issue of fashion.
Thank you so much. And also I have a little follow-up question as well, because is it typical also, because Brandei, you mentioned this difference between primary and secondary market, and I would like to dig in a little bit. Is it typical also for the contemporary artists, so to say artists who are currently or up and coming, even emerging, to be auctioned or like to be presented in the auction context? Or how do you feel about that?
It can happen, and unfortunately, it doesn't really work. What sometimes happens is you'll see a young artist who maybe is really fresh to the art scene, doesn't have a gallery or has a short lifespan with the gallery, has a work come to auction and it has a huge price, hammer price, that's 10 times, let's say, what the gallery is selling it for. This is not great, this massive ascent at the beginning. I think there is a reason why galleries exist. They promote the artist, they build their market, they build a following. I think, to what Nicholas has been talking about, what are your motivations for buying work? And it should not be to speculate. And this is really the problem with, and we've seen it with Instagram, which is a great platform, but young, cool, Instagrammable artists, and then they make a print and they sell it at an auction house, and it's massively they can achieve these huge prices that can actually in the long term be destructive to their careers and counterintuitive, and it's just not the way it should work. So I think I'm quite traditional, and I believe in a physical space for a gallery, mainly because you need to see work with your own eyes. Not just on a computer screen. You must go and look at things in person, especially with photographs, because we're talking about not just the image taken, but photographs are objects, right? Ansel Adams said, a photograph is made, it's not taken. And this is very true, not just with vintage work, but contemporary work. You need to look at the paper, understand the physicality of it, the dimensions, the way the works are framed, especially with contemporary, is part of that. It's inherent to the object and the value of it, and you cannot see this on a computer screen. So that is part of the reason we need to keep supporting traditional galleries who are bricks and mortar, and for them to travel and go to big art fairs and visit them there and see the work. But I digress, but younger artists, I don't think it's very clever for someone who is unknown to throw a work into a sale. I wouldn't do it at Sotheby's when I was head of photographs there. I have seen it happen, and it never works out well in the long term.
Thank you so much. It's a very precious comment. We mentioned also that some collectors also that I talk about sometimes, especially here in our region, they feel that photography is the medium that can be duplicated, reproduced, and this is also something that you mentioned earlier. So also the fact is, and to some obvious, to some maybe not so obvious, is that photographs often come in additions, right? It's not the rule. Often they come in addition. Could you explain a little bit more, basics, how it works, what it means, and what is really the roadmap of photography in the art market, also price-wise in that context of additions and maybe unique pieces and all that?
Sure.
As short as possible.
No problem. I think the first thing to say is there is no cookie-cutter version for every photographer, right? So there are general rules of engagement and practice that some people follow, some people don't. And don't be scared or suspicious of that. Turn it around and look at it as a journey of discovery and something fun to learn about. When you go to a gallery, see a work, see an artist's work, ask the gallerist, or if you're at an art fair or at an auction, what is the edition? Again, the idea of editioning came out of the photo market. So photography has been around since the 1840s, but this idea of replication of the photograph for a market, for a commercial market to put on your wall, came about in the 80s. So, and as I mentioned before, people like Cartier-Bresson, and many of artists, photographic artists of his generation, did not want to, they didn't edition their works, because they didn't feel that they were not motivated by the market, they were motivated by other reasons. So this construct of editions really is to serve the market. But again, don't let that put you off. This can be in your favor. And I would say that most artists today understand that most collectors want smaller editions. So editions of 3, 5, 10. When you're looking to buy a work, number one, as we've said, like the image, is it signed? If the artist signed the work, is it signed? Because that, stating the obvious, means that was made in his lifetime, and he signed that off, he was happy with it. There are some artists, Terry O'Neill, for example, the great sort of celebrity, glamour, fashion photographer. When he died, the estate the gallery that owns his estate came out with posthumous prints, with estate stamps, and a digital signature. Yeah. That has its own price, which is less than the work that he signed. Now, I would argue the work that he signed in his lifetime, he approved of, it's not that much more expensive than the posthumous work with the digital signature. To me, that if an artist if a print wasn't made during their lifetime, overseen by them, I think this is problematic for me. And this is where you get into things like Terry O'Neill with posthumous prints, so after he's died. And actually someone like Cartier-Bresson, although there are no additions to his work, his estate, which was managed by the family, and now there's the foundation in Paris, absolutely said, we will never make posthumous prints. So if you ever see someone at an auction house, I doubt at a gallery, but at an auction saying, oh, this is a posthumous print, it's an inkjet print with a digital stamp, bullshit. That was never, ever, ever made in his lifetime. And how do you understand this? How do you discover this? Through relationships. So editions, don't be afraid of them. There are crooks as there are in every industry, but this is why it's so important to go to galleries that have a good reputation. And this could be young or old, galleries that have been vetted at art fairs. So you know that they are trustworthy sources, and they themselves do not want to cannibalize their own market by saying, here are 10 prints of this image, but then make 10 more. That would not be a business, a savvy business move. So people really know that and don't want to do that. But you're right to ask questions, question these things. And just to add, it can get, I think it's easier, much easier with contemporary artists, right? The young contemporary artists, they've been documenting their works, they have good accounts, they know how many they printed, there are 10, and they stick to this, right? However, it gets tricky when you're looking at someone like Cartier-Bresson, who had vintage material, modern prints, later prints for the market, some are signed. The vintage material may not be signed, but may have a time life stamp or a magnum stamp. And that's where, if you want to get into that market, you really need to speak to experts who understand that, because every piece, every work has its own price point and market.
Perfect. Yes, thank you so much. Also, I think just to say that I think it's also such a precious comment for the artists actually to be rigid from the very beginning as well, right? And try to really be super thorough with that and keep order of things, not to really lose track of their editions as well, and in consequence not be able to actually follow the rules as they are. Sorry, just.
So just after that brilliant, typically brilliant Brandei description of editions, posthumous and lifetime, I'd just like to go back to a very obvious point which you made, which is most of these photographers made their pictures for books. And the photo book, for anybody who's starting a collection, the photo book is the way not just to educate yourself quickly, but to notice the beauty and magic and poetry of a sequence, the art of juxtaposition. The photo book was the thing. Photographers weren't thinking about having them on walls. So take an interest in the photo book, discover its beauty. If you can't afford it, go to libraries and use the photo book to educate yourself. And I'd like to make just a general point about street photography in the 20th century, which is a particular passion of mine. All of the great street photographers you can find in books. Obviously you can't see the quality of the print, but we're talking now about the way the work was intended by many of these photographers to be presented in book form. What fascinates me about photography and what makes it a unique medium to collect is the transparency of the quality. There's something about a great photograph, it has nothing to hide behind. If you've got art photography or conceptual photography, then in a sense there's a whole lot else going on and it's much more difficult to work out how good it is. But when you see a great Walker Evans, or when you see a great Gary Winogrand, or when you see a great Martin Parr, there is, to use this word, an absolute transparency, a clarity about the relationships that are depicted in this picture, the historical moment, the
the framing, whether it's formal or informal. So just remember that, train your eye, and you will see that just certain people are so much better. There's this magical signature. It's like a colour, it's like a smell, it's like a breath. Very difficult to use words to describe, but it's there for you to develop your skills and to smell the sensibilities of these pictures and start working out who are the greats.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for these very, very precious comments and ideas and insights. And actually, my next question is about, well, actually changed maybe nature of photography these days. What we even call photography. What is photography? And there are many different techniques applied. Also, when you go to Paris Photo, I mean, is it still a photograph or is it already something else, like a collage maybe? Can it be a photograph? So I just wanted to maybe talk about that a little bit, like what is your opinion or what are your taste preferences, or also how to kind of position these different means of expression as well, techniques in the photography context as well. And then also including AI, actually, that some people claim that it will actually destroy photography in the process. So what is your take on that?
How to define photography today?
Well, yes.
Yeah, it's also a big quest for, I think, photography institutions as well. Like collecting photography, I think it's more easier to collect like a classical piece, framed photograph or photo book. But there is certainly a line in exhibitions that a lot of projects are like photography installation or photo-based works, which are like in between genres. And yeah, it's I think like it's a bit more complicated to collect like a photography installation, since you need that much space to see the complete artwork. From this practical point of view, I can say that. And but personally, I really like this line in photography, where photographers start to think about the space, what they occupy with their works and how they work with light and this kind of interior design elements. And yeah, in this framework where now we are speaking, in the framework of collecting, maybe it's for institutional collections, not personal collections, but yeah, this is like a new thing, I think, in the field of photography. And yeah, NFT and digital photography I really cannot say a lot of insight, because we are still learning. And in Kappa Center we are not collecting, so we don't have a policy for like digital artworks, how to deal with them. But we certainly will have programs regarding the importance of AI in image making and how actually it can influence the history of a certain artwork, because like fake info and fake historical background can really influence the value of actual artworks. It's also part of, I think, this conversation, but maybe it's a different line. Yeah, I think AI imagery also has this potential to just make some fake news about actual artworks and not existing works.
I think I have to admit I'm not super well versed in digital and AI, mainly because I'm not so interested in it, so therefore I need to inform myself better and learn and educate. But I will say, I think what could be good with AI is to push photography further. So if we remember with the invention of photography, the art world said, oh, it's going to ruin painting. No, it actually pushed painting further. If you think about all the great techniques and schools of painting that came out because of photography. And I hope and I wonder if we will see this with AI, with photography, making artists re-examine their practice and their work. And if you don't know, some of you I'm sure know Foam Museum, Photography Museum in Amsterdam. They had such an impressive group exhibition, I think in 2016, 17, called Back to the Future. And it was primarily young emerging photographers who used old photographic techniques and processes, but in a contemporary way. And to me, this was beautiful. Younger people respecting and going back to the beginnings, the origins of the medium. So I hope that we see more of that, a re-examining of the artistic practice of photography because of AI.
I think that's a brilliant point about how AI has the potential to expand what photography means, the scope and ambition of photography. And that really prompts a very obvious observation about the extraordinary history of photography as the poor relative of painting and art. So I'm on the Tate's Photography Acquisitions Committee, and it was only in 2004 that we got an international curator of photography, and the Tate was trying to look at ways of acquiring photography and exhibiting it alongside various displays in the Tate. And until this point, there had been this extraordinary discrimination against photography. The only photography that made it into the collections was photography that was wearing the clothes of contemporary art. So we were buying art, the Tate was buying art in the 60s and 70s and 80s. It was buying photography by artists who happened to use the photography. So we would have people like Richard Long and Hamish Fulton, performance artists doing walks. We would have a great feminist artist like Joe Spence. Photography only got it in if it was art. And of course, what is so fascinating is there have been many great photographers. Let's take Cartier-Bresson, one of the greatest photographers in the history of photography, and yet at the end of his life, he started making pathetic little paintings because he wanted to be taken seriously as an artist. I mean, it seemed to be the greatest insult to his achievement and to the medium of photography. So this is a phenomenon that continues to amaze me, and I think Brandi's point about AI is really on the money.
Fantastic, thank you so much. And actually, staying with you, Nicholas, as a collector, still not in the institutional context, but your private collector's mentality, so to say. So how do you approach collecting photography now? Is this your passion still, interest, or is it also investment, or can it be investment also for people interested here?
Well, I never bought anything for investment. I mean, Brandei was so completely bang on. And I'm not really collecting much more. I collect many things. I'm not a very rich man. I've been quite lucky, but I'm not a rich person who can just throw around things. So I've got a collection of Roman glass, for example. You might be very interested to know that many people who collect photography, black and white photography, also collect glass. Very obviously, I was talking earlier about the stereotypes. You might be amused to know that many people who collect glass and photography are also dentists. Hard, shiny objects. So you can never stop asking questions. We are all part of various stereotypes. So I'm actually not really collecting much, but because Brandei and I have started living together, and she's got her collection and our collection, we are Now, the first picture that we bought together was...
It was a photogravure of a work by Blossfeld, Paul Blossfeld. Does anyone know Blossfeld?
So Blossfeld is this extraordinary artist who's looking at the natural world, and he's seen plant shapes, plant forms that look identical to ornament and architectural detail in the Western world. So you don't know whether, in the picture that we put together, we don't know whether this is a photograph of a living plant form or whether it's a Gothic ornament on a Gothic cathedral in Northern Europe. So now the next chapter is, because we have very different tastes, the interest as a collector, as all of you in this room, as you start collecting, as your relationships mature, as they change, as you have children, as children leave home, all of this art, all of this photography will be part of your history. And it'll take you on a journey in which you learn as much about yourself as you do the medium of photography.
I think just to add, whilst, yes, I don't buy a photograph or any work of art really for investment reasons. Equally, at the same time, if you're spending a significant amount of money, which I would say for a photograph is 5,000 euros and up, do your research, learn about that photographer's market. Again, not with the idea that you would resell it for 3 times the amount in 2.5 years, but be comfortable with the decision that you've made, right? So if you value it then at £5,000, ask yourself, will I still value this in 10 years for £5,000? Do I still, and that's Nicholas's point of, think about, is it something that you think you could live with forever, for 10 years, for a short time? I definitely have made mistakes where I've gone to dinners and of an exhibition opening, and I think this is a gallerist dream. I sit there and I'm a bit tipsy and I say, oh yeah, I love that, I want to buy that. And I put my name down, and the next day I think, okay. And it's often those impulse buys that don't stand the test of time. And it can be hard if you're at an art fair and it's busy and you are pressured by people. Make a decision now. I would say don't think about it. Go home, sleep on it if you're still thinking about it. But be comfortable with the value that you've spent on it, and don't expect it to give you that financial return, that it has grown or lost. Just be comfortable with what you have spent.
Just on that point, one extra thing which I think is really useful with photography is that if you look at the careers of many photographers, photographic artists, they have moments where they really hit the high point. Often you can almost generalise, because often in their early 30s that they've acquired a combination of technical skill, certainty in terms of their artistic signature, and then they come up with the form that is the right vessel for these 2 other elements. So if you're interested in a particular artist, really look and see whether you can compare it to other moments in their recent career. And just think about, is this likely to be almost the summit of their achievement?
Fantastic. Okay, so we've been through that and different forms of expression and also provenance for photography. But I think it's time maybe to talk about public collections as well, because we have this incredible opportunity here as well. So because we touched upon it already, but maybe to representatives of 2 very different institutions also, and different approaches as well. From an institutional perspective, what is the institutional collection really, and how is it built over time, or how even the acquisition process looks like as well, like how to also understand this part, and why is it important for the collection and for the venue. So maybe how much because it's also different.
I think we also, that's one slide. Yes, because I will be a bit shorter because we don't, the Kappa Center is not a collector institution, so it's not a museum. Also, the complete name is Robert Capa Contemporary Photography Center, and maybe that's why, because usually a museum is an institution which has collection and constantly and building it with like a certain concept, based on a certain concept. But in Robert Capa Center, we are responsible for distributing and showing this collection of images of Robert Capa, which were acquisited by the Hungarian state in the end of the 90s. And now we have a permanent exhibition of Robert Capa's life work and work based on this collection. And we call it like a master collection. Also, it's titled the definitive collection, and it's approximately 1,000 images. And those were, of course, not developed by Robert Capa himself, because he was a photojournalist. And also, I think it's also related to the price in the market and the editions, because like certain practice in photography, like photojournalism, is not was not connected to like producing the actual work on paper. And in the case of Robert Capa, this collection was made in the 90s by Cornel Capa, who was the brother of Robert Capa, and both of them were founding members of Magnum and ICP in New York. And this collection was delivered by in collaboration of ICP and Magnum Photography. And this is the collection which we have in the Robert Capa Center, and we organize like this exhibition as a permanent exhibition since 2023, and also conferences and like actual press photo exhibitions in each year, Hungarian press photo exhibition, also related to work with the legacy of Robert Capa, who was a photojournalist. And yes, he had also portraits in his work, which can be seen also in the Capa Center, in this part of this master collection, which can be considered more like art photography, but he was not defined himself as an artist during his life. He was a photojournalist, a war photographer, and but he was, I don't know how many stories you know about him, but he was very like a popular figure. Also has a very much like a lot liaisons with Ingrid Bergman, and he was very popular among also women, and he was this type of guy who would tell a lot of stories about his own life, and actually he had a lot of stories as a war photographer and photojournalist. So he was in different company of high-profile people, and he also took photographs of them. And so these can be considered like portraiture and art photography, but this collection was not developed by himself. It was developed in the 90s, and it's an edition of 3. There is one edition in Japan, and I think the third edition is at ICP. So
thank you so much for this insights into the institution that you're working. And then can we will maybe also be very honored to hear Nicholas how it works at Tate, also how that collection of photography.
Okay, so I'm not here talking on behalf of the Tate's photography acquisition.
Just overall,
So I don't know whether you know the term court clown. I've always considered myself to be the court clown on the photography acquisitions committee because I say the unsayable. And so what's happened at the Tate is since 2004-05 we communicated with other important art institutions in Europe to see where they had strength and where they had weaknesses. So our collection didn't obviously overlap. So obviously in London we have the Victorian Albert Museum, and they have a very, very famous important photography collection. We didn't want to do anything that would be similar to them. So we decided to specialize in a few areas, and one of the most interesting one was global modernism. So post-Bauhaus modernist photography, but from many parts of the world, particularly Eastern Europe, particularly Southern America, really significant work that has not been seen, and because the Tate is an international art museum, it's very important that we represent other photographic narratives and stories and traditions. So this has been something that we've been working on. We also decided to become specialists in, have a specialist collection in Japanese photography, and so we have very good holdings there. What's happened in the last 7 or 8 years is because of the arrival from America of American identity politics, the Tate is now completely obsessed with equality, diversity and inclusion. It's something entered the water supply at the Tate, and now this is the complete obsession of all curators. And so I'm really a great believer in buying and exhibiting traditions that have been ignored, and this is very, very important. This is an international institution, but at the moment, I was saying earlier how the art market, the photography market goes in fashions. So I think we're going to have a decade of trying to redress this balance. And you notice this in the art markets. There's a huge, every gallerist has got to have an African American artist, or Afro-Caribbean, or an African, and there's some great work out there, and frankly, there's some less good work out there. So this is a chapter that we're going through, and so it's going to be a great time for the gay community, or queer art as it's now called. It's going to be a great time for sort of gender fluidity. How good the work is going to be, whether it's going to stand up, we don't know. But one of the artists that we backed, Zanele Maholi, the South African artist, is, the first time I saw a Zanele, I was saying to you earlier, what I love about photography is its transparency, its quality, its originality, its genius, it hits you in the face. The first time I saw a Zanele, I was bowled over. Obviously we've got a big Zanele show at the Tate at the moment, and so that's a very good thing.
Fantastic, thank you so much. And actually also my question is maybe a follow-up question generally to the experts here. Because also apparently, speaking maybe as an observer a little bit, so different venues or different institutions, they have different priorities in terms of collecting, or building their collection or topical interest. And what does it really mean also for the artist, and how the artist should approach that, also thinking about being acquired to the museum, or is it something that the artist should keep in mind at all, or how to even think about it as the artist, from the artist's perspective?
Very good question. I think the role of the museum is pivotal and just as important as, of course, the gallery, the art fair, the primary, secondary markets. It's an ecosystem, and they all operate together, and they all need to communicate. And so if you are coming in as a collector, you need to engage and read and learn and talk to people from all of these areas. because again, they're all connected. So with the museum, number one, I think there's a misconception with artists who think that a museum should want their work if they donate it. And the problem, of course, with museums, we have a big problem in the UK that there is a lack of funding. And the funding also covers, of course, the storage of these artworks. So when I worked at Sotheby's for 10 years, I would get phone calls from artists saying, I would like to donate my work. I've seen on Instagram you're friends with the curator at the V&A. I want to give them my work for free. And the problem is the V&A, that's very generous for people to want to give it to them, but they may not have the means to store the work in the right way, right? So, but if you are lucky enough to be acquired by the V&A or another institution, a museum, or they accept your donation, I think it is important. It is a validation of, on some level. And what is that level? I think for collectors, of course, it gives you, you feel validated, to use that word again. You feel you own something that a museum has. And that might be a motivation for you. There's nothing wrong with that. There's equally nothing wrong, of course, with owning something that isn't in a museum collection. We all have different tastes. So I'm very interested in name-checking the V&A again. They hired, well, they opened a position for, it's called the Parasol Foundation. There's one curator, Fiona Rogers, who about maybe 2020, 2021, she started her post. It's an endowment, so a very wealthy arts patron has committed to, I think, 25 years for the salary of this person and also the funding fees, the set budget, for them to build up, under the umbrella of the V&A, to build up a separate stream for women photographers, or photographers identifying as women. So the remit is to buy works by women, and they are buying these pieces that have been overlooked. So equally, that curator is looking at, as Nicholas was saying, looking at other institutions and saying, well, what's been missing at the Tate? What's been missing at MoMA in New York? You know, where are these pockets that there is a gap? So back to the artists, I think a lot of curators, if you're a good curator like Messi, you're very active within the industry. You know other gallerists, you know writers, you go to festivals. How do we all know each other? From hanging out, and that you can use to your advantage as a collector, because there's so much transparency in the photo world, right? And I don't just mean the market, but it gives you, I think, confidence in the market because there's transparency in the industry. This is quite unusual that there's so much discussion and shared information and prices in the photo market. You don't really have this in the contemporary, in the impressionistic markets. It's much more closed doors. So really, I can't stress enough how useful that is if you're looking to get into the photo market. We are all, how do you say, we are all responsible to each other. And we're passionate about it, but we're also all friends, so there's a shared knowledge that you can get in on.
Absolutely. And speaking of which, before we move into questions, very soon, because I think we are already, you've touched upon so many interesting issues, and thank you so much for sharing so much your knowledge about what we talked about. And then my question is actually. Also, because we are going to have a little surprise here with Emese. Can you name a Central European or Eastern European photographer, contemporary photographer, Polish or Hungarian?
Zofia Kulik.
Yes, except from her. That's why we established that she was born in the 40s, so more contemporary.
But you know, I mean, I think myself and other people in the wider photo market, this is interesting though, because she's so well known here, but a lot of us who were not familiar with the Eastern European market really discovered her in Arles last year. So this is huge. We need to see more. Yes.
Correct. That's very interesting. Can you?
So I'm covered with shame on this, and actually we were Googling because I knew you were going to come up with this question. and we, on PAC, the Photography Acquisitions Committee, the Tate, have bought some really good modernist, early modernist photography by Eastern European, including Polish photographers. I know the works. To my shame, I can't remember the name. What interested me is, oh my God, this is great post-Corbusier work. I couldn't remember the name. I apologise to everybody in this room.
Thank you so much. But actually, this is very good. I mean, great, actually. Perfect answer, because we have solutions to that.
Or if I can add, Rafael Milak, because of course he's a Magnum photographer.
Yes,
so that's understandable because that's such a big platform. And it's a shame that there are not other big platforms profiling, showing the work of Eastern European photographers, historical or contemporary.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Brandei. I mean, exactly. So, well, this is also one of these situations that was the ambition actually of this meeting, that we feel here that there is a need, obviously, to share more about Central Eastern European photography and to position it in the world. So I was really curious also about that and how much known we are outside also of our circle, right? And then before we come to your questions, which I'm sure you have many of after these fabulous remarks. So we are here actually thanks to the Nabytków Instytucie that is going to lead also, of course, Poland, and is going to take over the Polish presidency next year in the European Council. And we have the pleasure, Natasha and I, to co-curate the exhibition at the Kappa Center next year. And precisely because there is so much need also for supporting visibility of the artists and also contemporary artists, we feel, because there is so much history, there is so much shared approaches and also evolution of Central and Eastern European photography. So this is a very sneak peek of this exhibition that is going to happen in February at the Kappa Center in Budapest. So the title of the exhibition will be European Kinship, Eastern European Perspective, Nationality, Irony, Community, Solidarity. So yes, and again now in this role we have Emese Mucsi, who is going to create this exhibition in a dialogue, because this is going to be also a dialogue of Polish artists and Hungarian artists. But then, this selection will be also a little bit broader, and then also we'll have an interesting program that I think is going to be very valuable also for artists that won't be participating in exhibition per se, but then they can still benefit from the events that are around the exhibition. And then maybe, Emese, also could you talk about a little bit also your background in this area, and also how you actually worked already on highlighting Eastern and Central European photography, Eastern and Central European aesthetics in this contemporary way, that we also have to do the work from our side to really make it visible in the world, it feels.
Yeah, thanks. Also just adding that Brandei was also in Hungary, I think, 5 times or like she was also invited by Kappa Center, and then after by actually like artists who developed like a personal connection. And like you also mentioned, it's important, and also photography community is kind of a small community, so you can reach people in like I think in 2 steps. And yeah, it's also a way to make Eastern European photography visible or more recognizable, to invite experts from outside of Eastern Europe. And also in Kappa Center we are doing this, and like you are now did this, it's also our task to make it visible, and yeah, to give like an international recognition for local artists. But yeah, it's a very complex task, and I can say that I'm constantly working on it. It's one of my missions, and I just selected like some exhibitions which I think were like a good platform to make visible Hungarian and Central European photography practice. And with Euphoria, Stories of a System Change from Hungary, it was a group show in the Kappa Center, and I was focusing on the story of the system change, and it was kind of a mixture of photo reportages and also solo artworks from that period, from the end of the 80s and the beginning of 90s. And it was also like a base for my further kind of discovery, what are the ways to make interesting Eastern European history, and what things are kind of determining the visibility of this kind of artistic activity and photographic activity. And then this year I made this Eastern European beauty, Eastern European aesthetics in fashion photography, which were also focusing on, has this kind of regional focus. And in this case, the starting point was that kind of successful story of the Balenciaga brand. Maybe you are familiar with the brand, and the artistic director since 2016 is Debata, who is a Georgian person. And so he has also like a common influence as we all have in Eastern Europe. So because we have like a shared culture of objects and influences in Eastern Europe before the system change. And these influences are really, I think, really visible in his designs. And those designs appear on people like Kim Kardashian or Doja Cat, so very exposed, high-profile people. And I think that's kind of an opportunity to also to speak about what it is, because of course we recognize it because we know what is Eastern European aesthetics, or we feel it because there is no definition for that. And like this success of Balenciaga and these kind of designs can be can open the door to kind of speak about what is Eastern Europe, what is our common historical background, and how it can be like a source of inspiration for the rest of the world, maybe. And this exhibition was focusing on that. And right now we just opened an exhibition, Photo Artist Book. It's not my exhibition, but it's in the Kappa Center. It was curated by Brandei Estes, who is running a very good art bookshop in Budapest. And it's a selection of the most exciting photo books from the region, and approximately 60 photo books. And I just wanted to put it in the slides because it's also strengthened the idea that in the Kappa Center we are all dealing with this subject to understand our identity and to have this knowledge to make this kind of artworks and photography project visible internationally. Yeah, and this book is also it's already available actually, and this is it's a reader. It's like 444 pages, and I co-edited together with Duncan Woodridge and Lucy Sauter, and also a group of co-editors from the Global Photographies Network group, and there is one chapter about decolonial theories, and I edited that chapter together with Nina Mangalayagam, and in that chapter we have one text about how decolonial theories can be interpreted and adopted in the context of Central European history and the photography field. This is also kind of something which we really would like to understand, because as you said, decolonial theories now really affected the programs of museums, and also how these institutions start to collect new type of artworks, and it was also I think it's open source actually on the website of Routledge, if you are interested in it. It's Wiktoria Michałkiewicz.
It's me. So, I mean, we are just going to say just a few sentences, or 2 sentences. Also, that I share the mission, actually, having worked also abroad for quite some time, and including, many different contexts, but also Fotografiska, that you might know, it's a venue in Sweden, and then with its international development. And now I work mostly actually as a connector in the art world, so to say, or a facilitator of many different projects worldwide. But then also I'm actually an academic on my other life. So I have a PhD in sociology, but then also I'm an anthropologist, linguist, and other things. So this this connection also with our issue of visibility and the interest in Central Eastern European photography, it kind of kept coming back also in my practice as well, both as a curator in international context, and then also it's a sociologically interesting topic because also the region is so rich in many different contexts, and then I didn't really understand why it cannot go out there into so it's also for me incredibly fantastic opportunity to also pursue my mission as well, to highlight Eastern European aesthetics in the world, for sure. So basically, maybe just very short about this exhibition. It's going to have this kind of dialogue form and touching upon these main kind of threads that we defined as a focus points for us to think about European kinship in one way, but then it's Eastern European perspective, and the exhibition is going to open mid-February, so save the date already. And then we were going to explore this topic via various chapters. So these are the chapters: transition, longing, space, identity, spirituality, grotesque, and New East, also reflecting the historical aesthetics. So this is just a broad selection of works, or the artist reference, visual reference, showing kind of historical commonality in many different ways by the artist, also identity, and then humor in irony, and Eastern European aesthetics. So, more to come soon. And I think maybe now it's time to open the for questions also. And I'm sure we have a lot of comments.
Can I just make one point that I was just thinking of? You know, if we think about how American photography grew in terms of the art market, it was because Americans were buying American photography and putting it on their walls. So you also, as a collector, should you choose to accept the mission, can be ambassadors for your culture, for your own, if it's good, right? So that is also something that I hope will give you pleasure to be ambassadors and promote your own culture that way. Because I think there hasn't been enough of local support in the market to help shift that international market. So I just wanted to share that point because, you know, there are great American photographers, and a lot of that is thanks to great American collectors and curators. And again, it's all an ecosystem, right? So you as a collector with 500 euros, 5,000 euros can be part of that.
Thank you so much, Brandei. And please ask questions to our fabulous guests. Comments, questions, wonderings. This is a great opportunity to...
We might have covered everything.
There we go, Maciej.
Thank you very much. This is a lot of to digest and very deep, many levels. But I was wondering about. Can everyone hear me? I was wondering if Brandei, could you say a little bit, I think you touched a little bit about this idea of intuition and versus impulse in buying the artwork. I really appreciate you sharing all the personal stories when you started, and if you could elaborate a little bit more about the importance of this impulse versus intuition, because I believe the intuition is a very important part of finding the work that, for example, Nicholas mentioned about the timeless of the artwork, which goes beyond the trend of fashion.
Absolutely. I think it's, again, Nicholas, as you pointed out, he made the really good point that just because you like something doesn't mean that it's good art, right? And so know the difference. And maybe have a budget for something that's fun and decorative, and maybe set aside another budget for something that's more serious. It depends where you want to collect, how you want to collect. Some people work with art advisors and build a collection and have a very specific focus, and therefore their intuition gut may be a response to already preconditioned ideas and rules by which they want to collect. That's fine. It's also fine just to buy what you like, but be aware of what you're buying. So that was my point about, if I would advise people, if you're spending over 5,000 euros, do your research. Don't look at it as a money-making scheme, but really make sure that's the best place to put your 5,000 euros. And will you still be happy with that purchase in the future? So it was more in relation to that. And so that impulse buy, I think, be kind to yourself. We make mistakes, and mistakes could be, for me, I bought things without thinking too much about it. It was a reaction, and you learn from those mistakes. But the first thing I bought that definitely was a mistake, because I didn't research enough, I didn't know enough about Helmut Newton's print market. I still like the image, and I like having it, it's in my kitchen as a reminder of, do your research, do your homework. But I like the image, but I know that it's never going to be worth more than what I paid for it, because it doesn't really have a place in his market.
Could I just add, I'd like to pick up on your use of the word intuition. I'm now going to say something that's possibly going to really shock you. I now work as a cognitive therapist. I've given up my career in film and television, and I believe intuition to be the enemy. Because intuition is generally a learned, reactive response. It's automatic. Occasionally, in interpersonal communications, there can be an intuitive response that is really positive and true. Most of the time, we don't live in the present moment. We are driven by these intuitions. And if we could be more present and think more rationally about why we yearn to have that particular artwork, I think we'll make better decisions, and decisions that will serve us over a longer time cycle. So in 10, 15 years' time, think, you know, I'm a different person, but that picture hopefully still exudes meaning. It still enriches.
So the piece you buy becomes a timeless piece of your story, of your personal story as a collector.
It does, but sometimes you will outgrow the work. In other words, the yearning you had that artwork met in your life, you've changed. Sometimes it's you that's changed, sometimes actually the artwork. Sadly, 10 years later, it no longer sings to you from the wall. And the one thing I would really encourage all of you is starting off your collections, move stuff around. Don't let an artwork ever get too comfortable. If it gets too comfortable, there's no dialogue. Put it somewhere else. Is it still talking? Does it have the resonance? Does it have the power? Does it stand up? What happens when you juxtapose it, as Brandei said earlier, with something from another era? Just be creative and keep interrogating yourself and interrogating your artwork.
And just to add to that, don't be limited by the space that you have. I think we should buy work that we can hang on the walls and live with, whether it's a painting or photograph. If you can, and I have such little storage space, that I rotate works, right? So as Nicholas said, move things around. So every 2 years I rehang in my very small apartment, and I put things away in my storage, which is in the hallway of my building. And that's a great way to enjoy and not be limited by the space that you have.
Yes, more questions?
Without the microphone, what do you think about, because we talk about crowds, names and stuff, what do you think about completely unknown people or so-called found photos without any owner? It can be collection or is it worth?
Yes, I think, so to that point, if we call it vernacular photography, just, photographs that are anonymous, that are often daily life, there's definitely been a trend, a shift, a movement in that. We've seen that in art festivals and fairs, and there is a market for it, and if it interests you, I encourage you to go deep and enjoy that. It has its own street, its own viaduct, its own way in the art market, and often that type of material, it won't gain in huge value. It's not going. It is what it is. So again, I'm not saying you should speculate, but don't spend £20,000 on an unknown vernacular photograph. Would be my advice.
And on that point of Paris Photo, one of the exhibitions that wowed Paris was a booth showing the work of an electric engineer working in California in the 70s, and he was a fetishist, and he took pictures of women who were friends of his. And in the history of erotica, I've never seen anything more odd, more amazing, more wondrous. And so, vernacular photography is a wonderful thing to embrace, because if that's you, if you delight in the found object, the mystery behind these photographs, which represent other stories, other lives that are, until this point have been completely forgotten. If that's your taste, go for it.
And the same with emerging artists. Yes, don't be scared of, acquiring a work by an artist who isn't represented by a gallery. My advice again would just be the price points. I would be do your homework, do your research, and if someone is totally unknown and they want a lot of money, I would be cautious with that. Or if you really love it and you're comfortable with that, go that way.
And to add to that point, if you buy something that suddenly is doing well, and museums are collecting it, it's gone up, it's doubled, it's tripled, it will probably go down again. And a real skill, and I'm not encouraging you to get involved in collecting to make money, but so when I have sold stuff, it's to buy something else. So often it's a good idea to ride the wave with somebody, and as they break through, and they're doing well in the secondary market, and the institutions are picking up, unless this is something that you really yearn for, you need, let it go, let somebody else enjoy it, take your profit, put it back into an emerging artist or something else.
And I don't know if you are familiar with this collection called Photobru. Not Fortepan, we can speak about that also, but Photobru. It's the collection of Bruno de Charme, and it's a collection of also vernacular photography, but also more like this fetish or mania-driven art group photography or photo-based works. And I think as a collection, so if you start to build a collection out of these kind of works, as a collection it can value a lot. Maybe you have to put a lot of effort to build a very interesting collection, but yes, a solo artworks can be very charming and we can be attached to the vision of the photograph, but maybe building something interesting, finding these objects, because these can be found also in flea markets also, or just the house of owned or stuff, like very random places. You don't have to pay for them sometimes. You just really find them, and maybe building a collection out of these can have a value in the future, but not for sure. And in case of Photobru, it's very very interesting collection, and but the collector came from background of a cinematographer, and he's also collecting art group. So it's a different market, but he has connection to that market, which is outsider art, focus on outsider art. And Fortepan is a different thing. It's an open source, but also based on collecting private photography, vernacular photography. And in Hungary we have this custom, I don't know if you have this here in Poland, but it's called Lomtalanítás, where it's happened once a year and people can put everything on the streets which they don't want to keep anymore. And this is where they found the basis of Fortepan. It was 30,000 photographs in one trash bag. And then they started to build this online inventory, and it's open source, so everyone can use it also for publications and different exhibitions also.
I heard that Iowa State in the US bought or it's open, so maybe they borrow the license from Fortepan. So there's American Fortepan right now also.
Yes, there's one in Iowa, yes. It's a Hungarian woman is behind the project. I think it's gonna be a know-how, because it's good, but it's definitely not based on the values of the market, because it's open source and it's more like community put together and also sharing online.
Okay, I think we are slowly running out of time. So one more question, maybe, from the audience.
I have one more.
And except for Maciek, we can hold just a moment. Maciek, maybe somebody shy. It's okay, somebody else. And then I'll go back to you, Maciek, to give a chance to.
I will be very short. Just maybe short answer. I would like to ask you a short answer, please, because we're out of time, I guess. You mentioned August Sander, people of the 20th century, really awesome collection visible by Fort this year. Of course, it's worth millions. I don't know how much money the whole collection is, but the question is, what do you think about the future of photography art market? What's predictions? What do you think about the future of the art market now?
I think at the moment, if we're talking about the commercial side of the market, so the buying and selling, there has been a dip in the auction market for photographs, but there also has been a dip in the overall art world and auctions. I think where photography, obviously there are effects of social, political, taxes going up, people wanting to preserve their budget for buying things. But I also think at the same time what we've seen, or what I've noticed in the photo market, is there has been an oversupply of work that hasn't matched the demand. I also think when we talk about supply and demand, and I keep saying this, relationships, build relationships with people you trust. There are many auction houses that I don't think do a good service to the photo market because they haven't done their research enough. And it's often the problem of a small auction house, regional auction house, where you have one person in charge of paintings, prints, photographs, sculptures. You cannot be an expert in all of these areas. Why are the big auction houses, Sotheby's, Christie's, Phillips, the best? Because they've invested in one specialist per category, right? And that one person goes deep. So I hope, what I look for and hope is that the market adjusts with the knowledge, the connoisseurship, which works equally on the industry side. I need to do more to serve you better, but you also need to be active and proactive and do more to learn about it and not just say, here, we all have to work together. It's a community. We can all benefit each other. And I think this will adjust the over-demand of works that are, there's lots of, unfortunately, fakes coming to the market. But again, these fakes wouldn't be selling and if the experts were not doing a better job, and if the buyers were not doing a better job of informing themselves. Sorry, that was a bit long.
Wonderful. And okay, so any other questions from Maciej, or Maciej gets the...
There's one in the back.
The final.
Thank you very much for this conversation. It was very informative. I had a question about, I think Brandei, you mentioned something about the dialogue that can happen between different mediums in art. Do you think there's enough done on the institutional level to, for example, leverage photography sort of in the context of painting, sculpture, etc.?
No. It's a short, fast answer, no. And I think that's a great, it would be a great starting point for museums to integrate it more. Some do, but they should be doing more, I would say.
Yeah, I feel like on the Western market in general, photography is seen, especially from East Central Europe, as more of a documentary or even archival medium, not so much as an art in itself.
Totally, and I think a lot of that problem also is the way it's sold in the market. There are photo galleries and then art galleries. There are photo auctions and then painting auctions. And I think we all need to show and look at photography in a more holistic way than just siloing it separately.
Okay, so closing remarks from us.
Just a final question. Of course, photography is a common practice to edition photography, and it's a common practice. But is it possible that photograph can be a unique artwork?
Yes, absolutely. It can be. It can be as a contemporary unique piece. It can be as a historic unique piece, for sure. It's just that it can be reproduced. But also, just to make a point about those Cartier-Bressons that were uneditioned, being printed at the beginning of the 80s, by the nature of those works were made in a darkroom by hand. So even though they were all taken from the same negative, you could argue that each one is its own unique object because it's not a photocopy, it was made by hand. So that's where technique is important, know what you're buying. But yes, a contemporary piece can definitely be a unique work.
And the Cartier-Bresson work was specifically unique because it was done by him on the paper that he was able to buy at that time.
Sure, but he wasn't a good printer. They're really not great. And you can see why people have invested more money in the 80s market prints than his prints.
So him being not a good printer even added to the value.
Or didn't.
Well, thank you.
Okay, I think, yes, we are now, way past 8 p.m. already, so, wow, incredible how engaged you all are listening also to our wonderful experts. So thank you for the questions, and thank you for your presence here and for sharing. And I think, apparently it's not enough, so we will try to bring them back to you again for more.